everybody, this is Sketchtoanimate. I'm Travis Blaze, bringing you another Back to Basics tutorial. This time, I'm going to show you how to quickly block out a 3/4 walk cycle. This I find probably one of the most challenging of walk cycles to do, but hopefully I'm going to be able to break it down in very simple terms and show you how you can go through this in a relatively short amount of time and start blocking out your own 3/4 walk cycle. One of the first things I'd like to do is try to figure out who am I going to animate. And so I decided to, a few weeks back, I drew this girl. Actually, I was drawing a bunch of characters on a plane to California from here, and I thought to myself, which one should I pick? And so I actually had people pick out one of the characters, and they chose this girl. So I said, okay, this is the girl character that I'm going to showcase on how to create a 3/4 walk cycle. This was actually the girl that I drew on the plane, and you can see here I've got her, looks like a little discotheque checkered board platform that she's walking on, but actually this is part of the plan and how I build out my 3/4 walks. So what you see here is I have on the floor, the ground plane, is I have a blue checkered grid system. Now this grid system is there, and it's important because it's allowing you to figure out where your feet placement is going to be at any given time. And so it allows you as a guide to watch out for slipping and sliding of your feet as you step and make each step happen. The vertical blue line that you see here, that is the reference point. That's the center point in which I am putting together the character that's going to sway back and forth. Now the top line that I have there is the most extreme up the character is going to be going. So from the grid to the vertical line to the top horizontal line. Now this is good to have, especially when you have points of reference while you're doing your 3/4 walk. Now the second thing that I like to do is I like to add in a box. Now this box is sort of the perimeters. This is really the containment area in which the character is going to be. Now before all of this, one of the first things I like to ask myself is, what is the story? What is the intent of what I am trying to create for my girl? You look at her and you go, well, she's got a heavy backpack. She's wearing a hood, like a beanie cap. She has long hair and a long sweater-like skirt with big boots and little like kind of comforter anklets. Before I start to animate, what type of character is she? Who is she? What is she about? In this case, I created a little scenario, a little story in my head that I find very important. And when you establish a story or a motivation or intent to your character, it tends to give it more life. So it's really important is to understand what is your intent for that character or for that motivation or for that action that you're going to create. The second thing is, what type of walk is she? Is she upright? Is she bowed over? Is she heavy? Is she light? Well, she's a very thin character with a very big backpack. So I imagine the backpack being kind of heavy-ish. She'll probably be like she is right now. She's a little hunched over. And so I wanted to keep that sort of action going. Then what I like to do is I like to put my references on the side. One of the first things that I want to option for you is that you can go in, and if you don't know how to do a character walk, it's always good to look at reference. It's always good to look at people, look at your friends, your neighbors, your sister, your brother, your coworkers, your peers. Maybe you don't have anyone to look at. Maybe it's just yourself. Well, if you can, grab a video camera or an iPhone or whatever you can that you can record some video reference and go out and actually record it. One of the great things for a 3/4 walk is getting on a treadmill and actually recording yourself walking. And then once you do that, and then bringing it into your software program, if you see up here in the left-hand side, which is right here, this is a little area that you can put your actual video in. In this particular case, I did not shoot reference, but I wanted to give this to you as an option so that you can have at least another way of looking at how to approach a 3/4 walk. If you don't have that option, just videotape it and take notes. So once you go in there and you put this video reference up there, now you're ready to start. This character is a culmination of many different people that I know in my life. one of the things I like to do is I like to block things out on 4s and 6s. So understand that what we're doing is we're creating a cycle that's going to loop into itself. And that's a key there, looping into one another. So your last key has to loop into the first key. And so there's a trick that I'll show you in how you do that. I like to kind of block out everything. You're going to be looking at overlaps in the hair. You're going to be looking at overlaps in the sleeve, and there's overlaps in the backpack as well as the skirt. So there's a lot of little subtleties that you need to be aware of, and just generally block it out. And typically I do it on one very loose pass. I did about 4 or 5 different iterations before I came to the walk cycle that I really enjoyed and wanted to do, and that's okay. You just can't give up. But every step that you go, every iteration that you do, every change that you make is one step closer to learning a little bit more, a little bit something different that you didn't know previously. This is after probably 5 different passes, I finally came to a walk cycle that I enjoyed. Now, don't be surprised if you do 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before you get to that walk cycle you like. One of the ways that helped me from not getting too frustrated is I kept it really loose and I blocked it out in simple terms. Simple terms meaning this is a 32 frame walk cycle done on 4s. And so the first thing I did was I drew my first pose. And I quickly went through and I went in, I figured out what is my down pose, which is the most extreme down, which is my first stride, my first step, which is frame 8. And now she's kind of shifting over to the left side, so I knew that was going to be happening. So as I was coming up for the next one, created my up pose. Frame 16 is the same as frame 1, or 0 on this case. It is the reciprocal of that. I am basically flipping the feet from side to side. She has put her right foot down just on the opposite side of the line, the center line. Then I know for the next key, she's going to do the same with the other foot, and it's going to be slightly over from the other side. So after I did that, I went in and I did the third pose. I went in and I put the other foot down. Now this foot, her right foot planting down, is the same as this foot, her left foot. So if I go on from here to here, back and forth, you will see that it's the reciprocal of the other. Again, the way I keep this in proportion is by using that grid system. And then in order for this pose right here to work into a cycle, I then took this pose right here and I added it to the very end right here. And by doing that, I am now able to take my next key and block it into that key. You'll never see this key here because I'm just using it as a reference point, and my animation will only go to this red line right here on the timeline. That is a very key point to keep everything in proportion and to try to keep this to be a flawless kind of like loop cycle. And you can kind of see what the general blocking is of that. Once I've gotten the general blocking down, and I'm gonna start breaking it down into partials, into separate layers, I start thinking about, well, what are my secondary actions? You notice I didn't put the hair on, I didn't put the glasses on, I didn't put her sleeves on yet, or her skirt, because those are overlapping actions or secondary actions that are reacting to her movement. Once I had the head that I liked, I started blocking out the general hair shapes all in the same poses right over each other, and I put that in a separate layer so you can see that it's in sync with the blue layer that I have down here at the bottom, which is my initial keys. And then right up the bat I started going through and I started doing her glasses that she's wearing, and then I added the sweater, and then I went in after that. Once I got in the general overlapping actions on 4s, separate layers over what I already had, you'll start to see more life emerging. You'll start to see little subtleties in the sleeves blocking out. You'll start to see the little indications of the stretch and squash on her skirt near her hips and her thighs. And if I take that out, you can kind of see this better. You'll see the actions of the sleeves and also the ruffs of the bottom part of the skirt. and then the hair. Once I did that, I wanted to start in-betweening and start figuring out where the hip actions and the movement go. So I started blocking out the body, the torso. I started figuring out this up and down and twisting action. Then I decided, okay, I'm ready for the next level. I'm ready to start in-betweening and then start adjusting and finessing my overlaps and getting everything to be more on model to coincide with the character's reference, which is down here. I know that I wanted to make sure that her face looked the same, that she had a smile on her face, so I chose the smile that she is over to the right, in the middle, just in front of the skeleton running, and I wanted to keep the colors the same, so I used the color version on the left as my reference point for color. I then decided to go in and start tying it down. I started with the feet, and then I started with the body. I wanted to do the feet first because that's where every time there's a foot plant, everything else would react and squash to that. I went ahead and animated the feet, which is right here, and the legs, and this is what I came up with. Now you can start to see life emerge out of this. I'm adding in-betweens, and this is basically all on ones. And then I decided to do the body. And you start to see more life emerge out of it. But what I realized is I needed, that body was never going to be really seen, but it's going to be felt because the sweater and everything that's kind of covering it will be reacting and laying on top of it. So even though you don't see the torso per se, you're going to see the thing that's laying on top of the torso. So from there, I decided to then add on top of the torso, the sweater and the arms, and the things that are attached to the body, the things that are going to be tight to it. I decided on a separate layer that I would do the sweater and the arms. And so I know that the arms are staying relatively in the same place with the exception of going up and down because they're holding on to the straps and the backpack. So we take out the body, and then we're left with what you see there. Now let's take out the ruff underneath. She's a headless walk cycle at the moment, but we're beginning to see a little bit more of the overlap in the secondary action starting to come to life based on starting with the ruff that I currently have. And then from there, I just went up my list. I said, okay, I need to do the head. And then with the head, I added the overlap of the beanie cap. And now we have the head. If you walk through this, the head slightly goes up. Right, so wherever the head goes and it slightly comes down, the beanie cap will react to the head's action. So I typically like to draw the head first, which was what I had already blocked out, and then come in after and add the beanie cap to the head once I figured out the head motion. And then I put them all together as one layer. So you can see that up close. See here we have the hair, and then we have the glasses. Now the glasses was interesting because I didn't really need to animate the glasses back and forth, so I decided to make it a single image and then just skew it and move it according to the head movement. You can start to see a little bit more life emerge from it. Now the beanie cap and the hair both react to the head movement. So I treated those things last. And I actually treated the hair last after the beanie cap because the hair had a lot more up and down action happening. I'll pop in the color just so you can kind of see what the hair looks like with the hair actions happening. And so now you can see that the hair is really, it's because it's a lighter, looser, and not more contained like the sweater. And it's going to be probably the most buoyant of all of the clothing material that is on the character itself. And then I started figuring out, well, I need to add the color. So I created a separate layer underneath, and I added color. And that really starts to pop everything out. This is when the fun part happens for me, is when I can get to finally start coloring. And you can slowly start to see the characters starting to match up with the character design that I have. But the last thing that I did was I wanted to approach the backpack. And the one trick that I did is I treated it as one thing, just similar to what I did with the glasses. I treated the backpack as one image, and you can start to see that the backpack, because it doesn't move back and forth, there wasn't really a whole lot of need for me to do every single drawing and redraw it. So I decided, well, I'll just keep it as one pattern and just slightly skew it and tilt it to match the body itself. I added the color. Well, actually I added the color with the actual image, and then skewed everything with each other at the same time. And then let's take a look at it without the grid system. And voila, we have a girl walking. I wanted to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. So from there I decided to add a little bit of color, a little bit of shadow tones, and a little drop cast shadow to kind of go in and really give it some pop. After all those iterations and finally putting in the shadow tones, we have our final walk here. And there you have it. Try this at home. Keep it really simple. You don't have to go as complex as this. My suggestion is start off with just the body. And again, my suggestion is to keep things simple. Start with the simple shapes. Even if you want to start off with a simple character without any clothing or hair, that's okay. Do this then. Start off with just the basic body movements and figure out what it is exactly that you want to do, just to get the proportions, just to get the mechanics working. But always keep in mind that when you're doing these, think about story, think about the intention of your character. Give it an attitude, give it a reason for walking. And when you do that, it'll create more excitement for your walk cycles. Use the grid system, use the square, block out simple shapes on 4s. Remember to take the first key and loop it into the last key so you can transition your last few keys into the first key so that you can create that seamless walk cycle. And then remember, draw a little line at the very, very top to kind of know that's where your extreme up is going to be. I mean, it will help keep your proportions more consistent. And there you have it, a 3/4 walk cycle. I'm Travis Blaze at Sketchtoanimate. And if you like this tutorial, please like and or comment below and share this with your friends, and always subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm constantly bringing more material to you every week. And remember, every story begins with a sketch. Talk to you later.